welcome back to another episode here at Sally's Speed Shop. My name is Jacob Davis. This is my father, Tim Davis, and he got us into yet another ridiculous project scenario because that's what he does. So a few years ago, our buddy Taylor Hole turned us onto a lead with 4 cars for sale for 500 bucks. And we're gonna show you just what we ended up with. And my dad went and picked these up. This was not my doing, and I think he did all right.
It was 2 Fastbacks, a 65, a 66, and this 68 coupe, and a Ford Granada.
We're gonna show you around the 4 cars, and in this episode, we're actually gonna focus on getting the engine running for this car, because this is the car we're actually working on, is the 65 Fastback. I don't know if it's the best out of them or not. They all have their own problems, but I think we can do something with this one and have a cool ratty Fastback for pretty cheap.
This one's the best, which is not saying much. When you look at it, it's really bad.
We're gonna show you around the Mustang trash bag real quick and get to work. So we've already introduced this car in a previous episode where I actually robbed the differential out of it for the Old Car Channel, Mike Bazzelli's Fastback Mustang. And he actually told me a good bit about all of these cars. And so when I reached out to him and sent him some pictures of the car and the VIN codes, he told me that the 65 was built in San Jose, and it was a 289 2-barrel car. And the other Fastback was a 66 built in Metuchen, New Jersey, and was a 289 4-barrel car. But this car is just a shell, essentially. Yes, it's got the suspension. Yes, it's got the brakes, but we're gonna be redoing all of that. And we didn't really get engines with them. Did we get any engine with them?
A block, a disassembled engine, 2 sets of heads, a lot of miscellaneous parts.
So yeah, a lot of parts came with these cars. So for 500 bucks, people will buy just the fender tag on these cars to be able to build a Fastback. But we got 2 Fastbacks, which are worth way more than you would expect, even no matter how bad they are.
Even with the roof like this.
Yeah, so
this roof is something to be seen.
It's got a one of those Starlight headliners in it, you know, that all the cool guys like in their trucks. But this one is natural. It is definitely just a bunch of rust holes. Yeah. But the whole car is actually pretty good, considering. The roof is really bad. There's a couple little spots in the rear, but the car as a whole is remarkably solid. So I think we're going to be able to build a decent little ratty Fastback out of it.
The goal over the coming weeks is to actually drop an engine in it, put a seat in it, put some glass in it. Between all 4 cars, put together one that actually runs.
Yeah, so I think it's doable. I think we have enough parts. Obviously, we'll have to buy fresh stuff like gaskets and stuff, but this is just a 68 coupe, which unfortunately not a lot of the parts actually cross over between the 65 and 66 to the later Mustangs. It's pretty rough.
It's really rusty.
Yeah.
Hey, we got 1 exhaust manifold.
There are little parts, like the solenoid could work for all we know, so steering box, little things, but yeah, it's pretty bad. So probably not gonna do anything with that one other than rob it of what is useful and get rid of it.
It does have 4 of the, what do you call these wheels?
Like Magnum 500 style.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. This is the Granada. The Granada is also hot garbage. It's a pretty straight car, but it's got rust like
from that vinyl top.
In the vinyl top deal that it had. It's just, the car's ruined. And it does have an engine, like he said. It has the interior. Like, it's a complete car. It was clearly parked at some point and then just rotted.
It's got keys in the trunk.
Oh, look at that. There are keys for it. I'm expecting wasps.
There were Mustang parts in here.
There's a big giant steel cable in here.
Wow, there's some
disc brakes.
Spindles.
Yeah.
1 spindle. I don't know if there's another one with it. There's a disc.
I bet there is.
But probably somewhere down
there. Because that's
there.
the whole front steering and everything.
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, it's also probably scrap except for parts.
The deal just keeps getting better and better.
I mean, some people have paid $500 for a car of this caliber that we're looking at, just the Granada. So really can't complain. There is a 302 in here.
It's got air.
It's got air conditioning. Well, had air conditioning. I wouldn't say it works.
It had a distributor.
Yeah, he robbed the distributor out of it.
It had an alternator. It's got a dipstick.
Does it have any oil in it?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's got oil. So that could be a good motor for all we know. Granted, it's smog era, so it probably makes no horsepower whatsoever.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a 76.
Yeah, that's not a good year for horsepower.
Yeah. We're going to try to get it running though.
Yeah. That's the goal.
Well, one day. I think getting it running and driving it would be a total waste of time.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the car that truly matters. We're going to show you the 66 before we get to work on the engine, and then we'll be rolling that car into the shop on a future episode and putting the engine in it, making it run and drive. So.
Yep. I got 4 torque thrust wheels with some nice tires on them, so that's going to be an improvement right there.
Yeah, because the wheels are, you know, they're cool, but they're really rough too. Like everything is just super rough. So it's got like an older style torque thrust alloy.
Got disc brakes on it.
Might even be magnesium wheel. Looking at it. Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, it does have disc brakes.
Hey,
I thought it had drums all the way around.
One less thing to do. That's
I thought about reaching out to Lead Brakes. That's what Mike Bazzelli runs on his car, and see if they have a nice brake kit we can toss on it, because I don't want to mess with the old garbage.
Yeah.
Personally.
Hey, that's awesome. I didn't know it had disc brakes on it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at the end of the day because they are junk.
That's true.
So the 66 is in another part of the yard, so we're gonna walk over there and take a look at it. It has a very interesting story, so stay tuned.
High speed police chase.
Yeah, which is really fascinating. Don't drink and drive. That's the moral of the story here. So here we have the second car, which is in a little worse shape.
Fastback number 2.
Yeah, I guess, okay, the 4th car, but the second one that actually matters. This one is much, much worse. There is not a single straight panel on it. This is all Bondo here. I don't know what the heck that is. It almost looks like JB Weld. The door is smashed in. There's rust along the bottom everywhere you look. There are no floors in this car, like at all. Like you can see the ground very clearly anywhere you look.
Well, the windshield got smashed out at some point, side window. It's had rain going in it for years. We bought it from the owner's brother. The owner passed away. He thought he was being chased by the police. I think he was drinking and rolled past a cop going kind of fast. I don't think the cop was even necessarily going to chase him, but he ended up following him. But in the process of trying to get away, he ran up under a Toyota pickup and ripped the rear end out from under it. This corner hit the back of a lifted Toyota 4-wheel drive,
okay.
like an 80-something Toyota.
But you can see it damaged all the way into the firewall. The whole door is bent. The A-pillar's got a big dent in it.
Yeah.
So this car got hit hard, or hit something hard. It's kind of a basket case, but it is a 66 Fastback, so surprisingly still worth more money than you would ever imagine.
It's got a good roof on it.
Yeah, the roof is way better than the other car, but that's the only thing better than the other car.
Yeah.
But there are seats in it and a bunch of random other stuff. We also have a whole truck full of parts for this car. But you can see, oh, there's lizards living in it apparently. See if we can zoom in on this guy. Yep, it has become nature essentially, but look at the rust.
Got a nice trunk lid.
Yeah, what the heck did somebody do just to open the trunk? It's crazy what people do. I mean,
people do that to like make blowers come through their hoods, but I don't know what was going on.
Look at that. How does this piece still intact while there's that big of a dent? Because that's a cast piece.
Yeah.
And then there's that big giant fold. I mean, even the taillight buckets are rusted. Hammered. And like there's a little, like, it looks like somebody shot it with BBs for years.
Probably a shotgun.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But even this is dented in. There's no suspension under this car at all. It's just the shell, and it has no glass at all. So
between this and a Granada, I think we could
we could have the world's rattiest Fastback and drive it like it looks. There are Mustang guys that would restore this car. It is restorable.
You know, when you look at the other one, you think, could it get much worse? And then you look at this one.
This would be the one to do what Tom's Refurb did, where he put it on a Honda chassis and made it front wheel drive. And everybody would be livid with you, but it would be the easiest thing to do is put it on something else that's running. Because it's hammered and there's not a straight piece on it.
Yeah, a body swap would be good for this.
But let's go show you some parts that came with it, and then we're gonna get into the shop and start working on the engine, which came out of a museum. It hasn't run in 40 years, and hopefully we're gonna be able to make that thing run this evening, which should be pretty cool.
Yep.
So this is an old C10 that my dad has actually had since he was real young.
17, 18 years old.
That's crazy.
So over 40 years.
In the back, it's full of Mustang parts. So this is a radiator that has apparently been held in place with a Coca-Cola sign, which is really interesting.
It's the real thing.
But I mean, as you can see, the back is completely filled with parts. You got AC compressors, steering boxes, heater boxes, power steering pumps, flywheels, intakes. The coolest part to me is that we have the 2 fold-down seats. So these are the fold-down seats out of both Fastback Mustangs. You got drive shafts.
Oh, flywheels.
Yeah, flywheels and the little
those.
spacers. But yeah, it came with so many parts that we just have a bunch of stuff. So
4-barrel intake here.
yeah, that's probably the one from the 66, because that was a 4-barrel car.
Oh yeah.
289 4-barrel.
Yep.
So yeah, we've got a bunch of crap. But for now, it is sitting in the back of what we fondly call the Gorilla truck. And it is, I mean, this thing's hammered.
When I was 18, I had a Nova. I'd rebuilt the engine, and I was selling the Nova, and I didn't want to get rid of the engine because it was a 4-bolt main. I thought it was, you know, worth something. So I bought this truck. It had old 307 in it. I put that in the Nova and kept my 4-bolt main engine, which is now in another truck down the hill. It has been sitting around for, I don't know, a long time.
I rode in this truck last time I did, probably when I was 7 or 8 years old, because we towed our boat to the lake with it, because his little Mazda B2000 wouldn't tow it. So we'd get in the Gorilla truck and take the boat to the lake.
And the reason it's called a Gorilla truck is because I had this little like King Kong looking Gorilla, and I mounted it on the hood, and I've got it somewhere still.
See the holes. And we actually pulled all the parts out of this truck and put them in another truck that I got running that we actually need to revive here on the channel because it hasn't been running in a hot minute.
What do we have here?
Oh, there's parts in here.
Is that a Ford or is that a GM?
I have no idea. It's kind of stripped out. Oh, it's a shell.
This is GM. It's got the little window. All right, Statue of Liberty.
Wild, man. But this truck, I believe, from what I know about these trucks, is actually a Canada model. As a result, it's got stuff like that. It just wasn't worth doing anything with. And the old speedometer is in the other truck, but it was in kilometers an hour and miles an hour, which you don't really see on these older vehicles like they did on modern ones, which makes me suspect it was built for Canada, and it actually has a little Canada import sticker on the door jamb. So that's a Canadian C10.
It's like we got our own farm truck.
Yeah, except it's very, very slow. Oh, and there's a pacer over there, but you'll see that at a later date. Anyway, we're gonna hit in the shop and see if we can make a forward run. One more thing before we get into the shop. This is actually the recipient of all the donor parts off of his truck that we just looked at. And you can see the Fort Benning sticker from when he used to live on base with his dad down in Columbus. And it has the engine that he rebuilt when he was just a teenager. I think this thing, the transmission broke in it.
At one point.
Like the shift forks no longer do what they're supposed to. It goes into random gears. And so we have to put a transmission in it. But this thing in theory would fire up and run right now. It has basically every part from his truck, including like the glove box door. Oh, and there's a sticker back here that says "Dirty Old Men Need Love Too." And it's my favorite sticker I've ever seen on a car. But yeah, this will come in a later episode too. We got to get this thing going and back on the road because it's a cool truck. And we call it the Silverback in an honor to the original Gorilla truck, because this thing kind of has a Silverback vibe. It's got, the top is all completely faded and in primer, and the rest is blue. But anyway, now we're gonna get back to the shop because we got work to do. So just like that, we're in the shop. All right, so we're back in the shop, and my dad has done a little bit of work on the 289 since you last saw it. It's sitting right here in front of me. He's got the oil pan on it. We're gonna work on getting the intake and valve covers and distributor and all that in it tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to make it run. This is a rocker arm stud that is replacing the one my dad broke when he was messing with this engine. So my buddy David Wakesman happened to have a spare one of these. It's actually a Chevy rocker stud. So normally these would have press-in rocker studs. So I would assume at some point in the past somebody changed these out. It's a pretty universal thing. They kind of use them in a bunch of different aftermarket heads and everything. So we're gonna get that on there and then work on buttoning this thing up and seeing if we throw a carburetor on it and it runs. I don't know. We're gonna have to figure out a way to set it on something to where we don't have it fall over or kill us, but it should be interesting.
So I made a box for the engine to sit in. We're gonna trim this out a little bit, and I didn't account for the bell housing that we have to put on there. So we got a Sawzall, we'll cut it out and maybe it'll work. I got the idea from that box where we got that 351 from our buddy John. And that's always an option if this one won't work. But you know, we've got like 3 weeks to get this thing running.
For some reason, he says he wants to drive it on Power Tour, which is going to be an absolutely miserable experience, I'm sure. But to each their own.
Yeah.
So one thing we have to do is put the push rods in, because if we forgot those, not a whole lot would happen. He's got the ones that came out of it, and they're labeled. They're where they would have gone. Not that it matters, but it's always good to try to stay organized. So,
well, the bottom will match, you know, whatever wear there was here.
Yeah.
The top, it's different heads, so that's not going to match. But
it wouldn't matter anyway with an engine like this.
No.
If you're building a race engine and you're taking it apart and putting it back together, putting everything right where it went, it's always a good idea. Or a motor that's in perfect condition, unlike this one. We're going to toss all these push rods in, then we'll have to adjust all the valves and do a few other things to get this thing ready. Oh, look at you.
Because we care, we're going to use assembly lube.
This is a white lithium grease, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you put that on there and then it gets washed away once the oil starts flowing. But will all the lifters pump up and this thing work like it should? Who knows?
Well, the cool thing about this, I mean, you can do it with other motors too, but the cool thing about this with the Ford is you can just use a 1/4 inch socket and actually prime the whole engine before you start it up. So
yeah, there's a little like drive shaft almost that goes down into the oil pump and into the bottom of the distributor, and actually uses the cam gear, of course, to turn the oil pump and distributor. So you can just stick this down in there and prime the whole system before you even turn the motor over.
Because we care.
Yep, totally. So we got all the push rods in, and now we have a drill hooked up to the oil pump drive, and we're trying to prime the system. We probably need to rotate the engine with the crankshaft bolt.
Yeah, we'll in a minute.
We're getting oil to some of the valve train already. See, these two have it, that one has it, that one has it. Sometimes some of them you need to spin it over, and it has an effect on how the oil flows. So yeah, it's the first time this thing's had oil pressure in a long time.
Yep, I'm shooting a little oil on all the valve stems so that when it does start up, it at least has some lubrication until it starts doing what it does.
Because we care. That's the moral of the story, the motto, all of that for this episode. We totally care.
Yeah. Which direction?
Yeah,
I don't think it matters.
couldn't tell you.
What was that?
I don't know.
Sticky valve? Did like the piston hit it and it popped back?
I doubt it.
Possibly.
Could be, maybe. It was loud though. None of these valves are adjusted yet, so they're just kind of sitting here and, you know, barely producing any lift. But we're gonna keep priming it and see what happens.
3 RPMs.
Maybe. Kind of hard to see, but a little bit of smoke coming off the drill. So we've definitely been working it a little hard trying to get this thing to prime up. We've got basically just 2 on this side that haven't gotten full oil. I guess 3, but these 2 have started to get oil. Just have 1 that hasn't really gotten any. He's got 1 on his side.
2.
It's sometimes like different little oil galleys open up depending on where the engine is in its rotation. So we're trying to spin it and prime it at the same time. But this drill is also priming way slower than the oil pump's going to spin even at idle. So we could just start it up, but I like to see oil coming out of, at least coming out of the top, so you know that there is some amount of flow. All right, so we finished priming it, and now we're working on getting the intake on. So we've got the intake manifold gaskets on, and we've made our little China wall of RTV. I prefer to do this over using the little cork gaskets because those are always a pain and they always end up leaking. So just pour a bunch of RTV on there. Obviously not a crazy amount, but just enough, and it generally works pretty well. Let's get this right where it's supposed to go. Should be pretty good. So now we're gonna put all the bolts in and just snug it for now, and then we'll let that RTV set up just a little bit, and then we'll tighten it all the way down. But we'll work on doing everything else while it's curing a little.
We got everything just about buttoned up on this thing. Intake's bolted on, oil filters in, oil's in, engine's primed, fuel pump's on. So now we just need to put a distributor in it, put a carburetor on it, starter, bell housing, and fire it up. But first we're gonna put it on our little box so that we can have it sitting on the floor when it fires up. We don't want it flopping all over the place.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. You see that we've got the engine set up here on the ground in the little box that my dad made. We've got the headers on, the ignition system. This is like a cheapy, like Speedmaster electronic ignition setup that our buddy Ethan sold us. And this is a carburetor that I rebuilt. I think it's a 650 Holly. I got basically some jumper cables hooked up, a power wire just powering the coil, and that also powers the distributor because it's got an electronic pickup inside of it instead of points. And we're just gonna see if it runs. We're gonna leave the valve covers off so we can see what's going on because I don't have an oil pressure gauge fitting that allows me to check oil pressure. So we're just gonna watch and make sure oil's flowing. I don't know, anything can happen. We guessed at the timing, we don't have a timing light handy or even a pointer down on the engine. It's missing a lot of random pieces, but it should be fine. I will say when you're doing stupid stuff like this, always have a fire extinguisher handy. So what I'm gonna do is hook up power to the coil, and then this is gonna be my starter because we don't have a starter solenoid. So I'm just gonna basically take this and touch it to here, and in theory it should work. I don't know if this starter works. My dad threw a used one on even though he has a new one, so we'll find out. Ready?
Ready.
What happened?
There's something.
Yeah, I don't think the ground was good. So
Let's try this again. Take this one off. Put this guy on. All right, you ready? Woo! That was a lot of fire.
do you still have fire?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It's got a lot of fuel in it, so I'm not entirely surprised. But it's definitely making spark. Closer. No telling how good the ring seal is or how good the compression is on this engine, so I think I might need more power.
We'll give it a good solid boost.
Playing with fire. All right, so we're gonna try this again and see what happens. To run, it's just struggling a little. It seems a little advanced when you first hit it, but then it's just spitting fire out the exhaust instead of, you know, actually running. I don't think it wants to choke, but maybe if I choke it without touching the throttle at all, it might make a difference. I don't know what it wants. Maybe it does want more fuel. Sometimes carburetors don't like having no fuel pressure too. They'll work a lot better when they have 7 PSI coming into them. So when you just have fuel in the bowls, they're not always happy.
The motor's probably fine. It's probably that sketchy carburetor.
I mean, it's literally completely rebuilt. Doesn't mean I did it right, but I haven't dialed anything in, so I mean, it could be like way off on the mixture screws and stuff, but I put them at like baseline when I put it together. It just doesn't want to run. It gets close. Let me try to just advance it a bunch and see if it'll even turn over. That made it less happy, I think. I'll let the starter cool down for a second. All right, let's try this again. That was a good fireball.
It's getting close.
I almost lost the hair on my hand. Yeah, it seemed happier. I mean, the fireball out the exhaust is a little concerning, but you know, why not? Let's just keep going. Yeah, it's definitely happier there on the timing, because it was running off the starter there for a second. All right. I think it's gonna run. It's running for a second off the starter, so it's more promising than it was, but it's a good fireball off the top. I guess I'll just go a little more, because it seemed to get happier. I'll lose some eyebrows.
Hey, put your face up there.
Jeez. That's aggressive. It still doesn't have oil on this one. Man, that was a good fireball. It ran for about 5 seconds there on its own, so that's definitely an improvement. So timing is definitely the issue, but we don't have a pointer, so we'd kind of just be guessing at the timing. I guess I'll give it a little more fuel and we'll see if we can get it to run just a tiny bit longer than that. But I mean, that's properly running at that point.
I think if a motor's been sitting a long time, like maybe the compression, it actually has to warm up and start loosening things up in there before it actually
you
runs
have no
good.
idea how the valves are doing, how the rings are, and
yeah, once it gets some heat in it, it's gonna do better on its own.
well, there's two different types of compression. You have static compression, which is what it is when it's not running, and it's just the math side of it. Then you have dynamic compression that happens as it runs, and it's spinning fast enough for stuff to not leak by the rings and get by a leaky valve. So you need to get it up to speed and get it loosened up so the dynamic compression comes up, and it makes a huge difference on old worn out engines. So I don't know, we'll see. We're just gonna go a little bit more. I'm gonna try to get some good fireball shots because I've enjoyed those. It's
great balls of fire.
I still have all my my hair, I think. I haven't really been too affected by it yet, but let's see if it'll do anything with a little more timing.
I think we're melting the handle off the negative down there.
Oh, jeez.
It's blowing fire on it.
Whoops.
We got a vacuum leak.
That's a big vacuum leak, too.
It blew our Gorilla Tape cap off, so that's probably not helping.
All right, so this is the Mustang Museum engine we got that hasn't run in 40 years. We've got it rigged up here on the floor, and we're gonna find out if it'll run. vacuum leak plugged. It runs poorly, but it runs. All right, one more time just for good measure, and I gave it a little vacuum leak, which is the opposite of what you normally want, but it seems to be happier with a little vacuum. Cleaner that time for sure. So air fuel ratio is for sure off, but it's running. We do have a couple cylinders that aren't getting a ton of oil.
That one started to come up.
That one started. Yeah. This one still hasn't. I think it just needs to run a little longer and prime all the lifters exactly how they need to be, but that's freaking awesome. So it sounds pretty good. I don't have any reason to suspect it doesn't have oil pressure because we have oil flying when I rev it. I think it's got potential, it just needs a little dialing in, and dialing it in here on the ground without everything we need, not the easiest thing to do, but it's running. We need to get a cooling system hooked up to it and be able to sit there and get it to idle and then set the timing perfectly and put it in the car. Granted, there's a lot of work to do to the car. So yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up though. We got a running engine. This thing sat in a museum for 40 years. Yes, we did slap a new set of heads on it, but they were ones we had sitting around. We basically used most everything we got other than buying some headers, a cheap ignition system. I think we have maybe 500 bucks in getting it running on top of what we paid for the engine. So it's a $1,000 running small block essentially. I think it's got potential. So as always, we appreciate you guys watching and following along. And if you want to see this, go in one of the worst fastbacks you have ever seen in the world, called the Mustang Trash Pack. You need to stay tuned and hit that subscribe button down there. Like, follow, see us on Instagram. I'm at Jacob Ross Davis. The man behind the camera is at Old Time Revival. Drop a comment down there. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. We're a bunch of idiots working on Fords that we really don't. We do mainly Chevys, but it runs. That's an accomplishment when it has a blue oval on it. So, gotta throw a little shade at you guys, but we truly do love all cars. So, anyway, that's gonna wrap it up. As always, thanks to each and every one of you for watching. It means the world to us.